Do I regret my past decisions? Do I regret getting pissed drunk on New Year's Eve and crashing my car into a ditch because I was trying to vomit, but I was so drunk I couldn't operate an automatic window? And then I was also too drunk to use a smartphone to dial 911 on myself. So I went to a stranger's house in the middle of the night to ask them if they could please call 911 on me so the cops could come and arrest me as I was covered in vomit and yelling in the middle of the street. Now, this was many years ago. Do I regret this decision? No. Why? Why do I not regret this or any of my decisions? My decisions. Because number one, control is an illusion, which we will get to. Number two, we are just nature running off. What does that mean, we are just nature running off? We can only ever act based off of our chemistry and our conditioning. We are just nature running off. My nature was depressed. My nature was my parathyroid, my chemistry, right? My chemistry, we can only act based off our chemistry and conditioning. My chemistry was depressed. And my conditioning was reacting to the chemistry by drinking to deal with depression, chemistry and conditioning. So this was a result. This is how my nature was acting based off my chemistry and conditioning. And we can only ever make one decision. And that's the decision we make. We can only ever make one decision. This is such an important aspect or concept, because this comes back to regret, shame, guilt, sin. How can we sin if we can only ever make one decision? We can only, whatever happens was always going to happen because it happens. There was never going to make another decision, ever. Because we can only act based off our chemistry and conditioning. The reason we think we have control is because we're attached, we're in the cycles of thought, and we think we're in control. And because we think, we are attached to our ego, our somebodyness, right? Good thing I have the circle here. The circle is, the center of the circle is thoughtlessness. Right? This is the observer. This is detached. The only reason we think we have control and we think is because we're attached to somebody doing something. We think we're somebody doing something. But when we're in the middle of the circle, we're the observer, right? So we realize when we're observing it, when we're detached, when we're thoughtless, that there is no control. Because what is surrender? What is surrender? What is forgiveness? Is giving up. Surrender is giving up the illusion of control. Surrender is saying, okay, I'm going to just observe, and whatever's happening is nature running off. When we finally get to thoughtless states, we start to become the observer, and we start to realize people and everything is just nature running off. And when we get into thought, cycles of thought, we create separation. We get caught in the illusion, in the ego and the illusion, and this is why we are attached. Thought causes attachment, and which causes separation, which thought causes us to think we're somebody and we actually have control. So, and that we actually could have made a different decision. So no matter what you've done in the past, you don't need to feel bad about it or regret it, right? Or feel shame or guilt or feel like, oh, I committed a sin. Well, you were never going to do anything else. You can only ever act based off of your chemistry and your conditioning. So let's apply this perspective and this concept. Stay in the center of the circle and allow all things to take their course. What happens when we actually do that? We start to see and understand and gain deeper understandings of what's actually happening. We observe nature running off. We observe what people are actually doing. Everyone is nature running off. Everyone is just acting based off their chemistry and conditioning. They just are identifying with their somebodyness because they're trapped in the cycles of thought, right? So they think they're in control. They think things are happening to their somebodyness, as opposed to being the observer and just observing things happening with detachment. So this is why there really is no regret. Regret is one of the many traps of the illusion. Regret is a trap of our ego and our somebodyness. When we think we're somebody, when we think we know, when we think we have control, when we think, keyword think, things are happening to us. When we start to practice presence and purification and facilitating a state of peace and calming the mind and body and dissolving the ego, going back to the center of the circle, we start to see and understand these things. The reason it's hard to understand for a lot of people, depending where we are, is because we never separated, funny I use that word, from our thoughts enough. Thoughts create separation, but at the same time, we have to get above the thoughts and be the observer. And we can observe the thoughts. We can observe ourselves acting and talking. Once we become the observer enough and practice presence enough, we observe ourselves doing things. We observe ourselves acting. We can observe ourselves arguing. We can observe ourselves making videos. And we realize we're just nature running off. Right? So how do we get on top of these things that can cause us lots of stress and depression, anxiety, regret, shame, guilt, sin? We have to work on, again, the answer always comes back to getting back to the center of the circle. And how do we do that? We dissolve the ego. How do we dissolve the ego? Presence and purification, because every second we're in the present moment, we're dissolving the ego and we're getting back to the center of the circle. We're breaking out of these cycles of suffering. We're breaking out of the illusion. We're breaking out of the programming. And we're starting to gain deeper understandings, right? And as we empty the mind, reconstitute the mind, this also allows us deeper understandings, which allows us to dissolve the ego even more. And it's just like this awesome cycle. The more we dissolve the ego, and the more we empty the mind, the more we can dissolve the ego, and the closer we get to the center of the circle, and the more we become the observer, and the more we become the observer, the more we can see nature running off in ourselves and others, and the more we see nature running off and become the observer, the more the divine is going to work through us, and the more we're God observing itself, and the more we realize I am God's eternal love pouring forth. That's a pretty crazy, awesome cycle, isn't it, my friends? So don't be too hard on yourselves. You can forgive yourselves instantly. Just remember, I'm just nature running off. I am really God observing itself. I am God's eternal love pouring forth. Namaste.